wanted to ask about, like, for Memoirs of a Geisha, they chose Yo-Yo Ma to do the cello. And you talked about how, like, you wrote concertos for these people, and, like, you know, and specified for that for them. Like, in Memoirs of a Geisha, did you know that he was going to be the cellist before you started writing the music? And then so then try to write music on top of not only for the film, but then that he could express as well?
Yeah, it's a nice point about timing, because I very much wanted to do Geisha. I love the book, and Rob Marshall asked me to do it. I was delighted, and I think the first person that I called was Yo-Yo Ma, who before I'd seen the film, who was in China. I got him on the phone. I said, "Would you like to play Memoirs of a Geisha?" And he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Whenever it is, let me know. I'll be there." Very excited. So then I hung up the phone and I thought, my God, I haven't seen the film yet. I don't know if it's a cello. So your question is, from the point of view of timing, a very good one. And it's no, I didn't know what the cello role would be. I did think from reading the book that the Sayuri, the young girl's character, she might be identified melodically, or at least in a tangible way, by the cello. That would have been a possibility, and I didn't think that. And I felt certain that Yo-Yo, whatever his contribution would be great, whether it would be a small part or a big one. He's the kind of artist that will play 2 notes or 200 pages in the same lovely spirit. Part of the answer should also be why I didn't like Itzhak. And it turned out that we wanted to have a violin for sequence or 2. I thought, well, I've already got Yo-Yo. That's a lot of star power in this, to put it one way. And I thought, well, I can't call anybody else other than Itzhak for this reason. That I'd known Itzhak from before Schindler's List was 1993 for about 25 years. And every time I saw Itzhak, wherever I saw him, he said to me, "So, when are you going to write a part for me in the movies?" So 25 years later, in 1993, I called home and said, "Itzhak, Steven Spielberg's got this movie, Schindler's List. It needs a violin, it can be only you." And he said, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to do a movie." So here it is 12 years later, and Steven acquired the rights to Memoirs of a Geisha about 5 or 6 years ago. So in that 5 or 6 years, every time I see Itzhak, he said to me, "When are we going to do another movie?" So I rang him up a few months ago and said, "There's a great violin part for you in Memoirs of a Geisha." He said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to." So the answer is that in the case of Yo-Yo, he came first, then the music. In the case of Itzhak, the music came first, then Itzhak came. So.
Question at the back.
I was wondering, are there any pieces, either film associated or concert associated, that you've been particularly intrigued with in the last year or so, besides your own?
Oh, what quickly comes into my mind is a piece that I heard the other night, a beautiful piece by Peter Leveson that he wrote for his wife. I'm embarrassed to say I can't give you the name of it. And it was sent to me by the staff at Boston Symphony. They were so excited about it.
The Buddha songs?
Yes. Somebody has produced the title. Thank you. With that lady, I think they're so beautiful. And his wife, Lorraine, stunning piece. And did you hear it? Were you able to hear her sing it?
She did them last year in LA.
Did she do them here? Oh, I see. I think they've been revised. They were just done recently by Levine and Lorraine and Carnegie in New York. Probably a lot of things, but that's one that floods to mind. I think I heard it 2 or 3 days ago.
Question on the side.
I heard a piece of Terry Rounda's, which I thought was fantastic too. Piano walls. A lot of things. Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you are called upon to write a kind or provide a kind of score that calls for music with which you are not familiar, I was wondering if you could describe your research process in general? I mean, where do you go to find scores and recordings, et cetera? And how do you go about sleuthing out what you need to
Yeah.
fully write it?
You know, I really don't. If something, I might say that Geisha was probably close to it. I mean, but close to a situation where I would have to say, I can't do this. I don't know the grammar of this particular idiom, I don't. That hasn't happened. Most of the material that I've done has been in the pretty broad area of, I guess, in the best sense, of commercial films, and so I haven't had to go do scholarly work to research a style or a period that I wouldn't be competent to deal with. I suppose I might do that. I might be more inclined, at least these days, to say that it's beyond my area of expertise or skill, and you need someone who's an expert in Baroque, for example, but I've never had to confront that. So.
Yes.
I guess another way of saying it, I've never really gotten in the habit of doing scholarly research, which probably many of you do, and opportunities that I didn't have as a youngster, probably steps that I would benefit from. But other than Geisha, I don't think of anything that I've been asked to do or I've had to do.
Do you read much in the emerging field of film music scholarship per se?
No.
Okay, I just wondered.
Partially, this lady also asked me about new repertoire that I hear. I've heard things that I admire, but I really don't listen a lot because I'm working all the time. And as you all know, it's a 24-hour-a-day process of working out the music that we're writing. And so it's difficult to go to concerts, particularly when you're hearing music that's probably better than one's own. It's no particular comfort.
Can you talk a little bit about free timing versus using click to get expression in music?
Yeah, free timing versus click. I like free timing. I grew up more with that than with clicks, and I think there can be an expressive benefit in many cases to it, particularly if any kind of bravati are required, where there's a kind of kinetic between the editorial aspect of the film and the action within the cuts and the orchestra itself. I mean, obviously, if it's a brain-twisting scherzo that has to be exactly rigidly in tempo, the click track can be a great help, and so a lot of times in concerts you wish you had one. So it's a good tool. I don't think it's a good tool. I don't think it's a substitute and a solution for everything, nor should it be. I think the right musical moment and the right film moment to use it needs to be well chosen. We don't want to use it as a crutch, because if we're using it as a crutch, it's probably because of our conductor or we are not good enough at the orchestra. Orchestras can do it. They manage things.
When you worked
Very well without it.
When you worked for Alfred Newman, did he tend to free time more than use click?
I don't remember any clicks at all.
So he was doing streamers and punches.
I mean, the first 4 or 5 films I did with the London Symphony Orchestra, the first one being Star Wars itself, we had no clicks. They didn't have headsets on the stage.
You did Star Wars without click?
Oh, the first 3 of them, I think. And the Indiana Jones. Oh yeah, always. Oh yeah. If you can keep in sync with the film and conduct well enough, the orchestra they do things that are a lot harder than our music all the time. So I think a good tool, judiciously used, not a crutch. No objections.
There was another question back here.
Sorry.
Yes, in the green.
Okay. This goes back to the question about music and about the amount of space in the movie that had no music. And I personally found that very refreshing. Do you think movies today have too much music?
Well, when I'm writing them, I do. But it's a good question, and I guess what it's asking is, can it desensitize us to the effect of it? And that answer could be yes. could be overused. I also, under the umbrella of that answer, would say that I think sound effects are way overused, not in terms of volume but density. I mean, if you the accumulated density of effects tracks, where it's because of I don't know if it's still called pre-dubbing, kind of combining effects. If you've got, you people probably know, you have 35 effects tracks or 50, it's not a big deal anymore. They're combined and they have sounds for everything, plus an orchestra. And my own sense of this is that it may be in contrast to some physiology that I'm not competent to talk about, but in the sense that the audiovisual equipment that we have selects, I think it's right to say first the visual, and it will subordinate the audio to that, so that we're, in a sense, we're deafened if we're distracted enough visually. A lot can go by orally that we miss. And listening to a lot, not listening to a lot, but listening to some old films that I can admire, what's lovely about them is not so much that there's less or more music, but the use of the sound effects is very selective and very discrete, so that physiologically we absorb this experience in a I think, a much more affecting way. A very general, broad answer to that part of that question, but it's a good question, and it raises many others about how we listen, how much we can hear, when is too much, not only too much presence of music, volume of it, or not vis-a-vis relative to everything else on the soundtrack. So it's a big question. I don't really have an answer to it, but I like the question very much.
Yes, back here. Yeah, me too. Right.
So
I was just wondering, it seems like there are some very strong differences between your approach to the original Star Wars trilogy and the recently released Star Wars trilogy. For example, there seems to be a lot more use of choir in the recent three than there were in the original. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. If that's more of an issue with your style as a composer changing, or maybe your perception of these films is somewhat different from that of the original three.
You know, I really don't know the answer to it. We're talking about a 20-plus year period, I guess, of changes in everything, including my own capacities and sensibilities and everything. Maybe I know more, but it's combined with a lot less durability. You know, I don't know. I know. I'm quite certain in saying that. I don't remember George suggesting, or anyone suggesting particularly, that we have chorus. I'm reconstructing, improvising really a little bit, and thinking that, because like the previous question was saying, is it too much music? I found myself saying, what on earth can the orchestra do anymore? We've just had 35 minutes of fanfare, and now got 15 minutes more of it come clear. Maybe a practical solution to this thing would be to have a chorus. Well, you've got to get a text, what are they going to sing, if anything, the questions that follow. But I think the decisions may have been taken more along those practical lines about how to keep the oral curve as varied, if possible, in a situation where so much relentless tutti is required. Those films particularly, I mean, you can't do it with three flutes and a viola. The energy has to be really pretty much full ensemble all the time, which creates some practical difficulties in terms of color and the earlier gentleman's question of our tolerance of that much of it. We can vary tempi. Dynamics not so much because of competition of sound effects and the kind of loud, overpowering loud action that was always there in those films. So I think it was probably, in some desperation, maybe an improvised attempt to vary the texture. And in the process, maybe to create a kind of quasi or pseudo-mythological coloration to it, to the characterizations that the use of chorus might have contributed.